Indie games are a neat category of media, titles created in an unconventional manner that are free to experiment however much they want, all in the name of passion. Some of the most successful games ever created fall under this banner: Minecraft, Undertale, and even Super Meat Boy. There's no real limitations when it comes to creating one of these. If you come up with some never-before-seen innovative idea, you're free to implement it with little to no trouble. You know, given you have the required funds to do so. So yeah, there are limitations, but it's like George McFly once said, if you put your mind to it, anything's possible. With enough money. I've heard a lot of people express that indie games are their favorite titles, absolutely ripe with energy and not afraid to push the boundaries in any which way. While I remain a stubborn consumer, loving AAA developers a little too much, there's no denying that the future of development lies within the hands of independent game makers, as when all is said and done, they're going to become the next big names. But there was a time when indies were pretty much unheard of. Sure, there were a few flash-in-the-pan successes every now and again, however, the rise of independent projects would soon be nigh with the advent of the 7th generation of consoles. The earliest indie developer I remember hearing of was Twisted Pixel Games, a little-known company based in Austin, Texas, notable for creating the Splosion Man games. Yeah, remember those? While initially showing interest in developing for Nintendo's WiiWare service, they eventually settled for the Xbox Live Arcade, a much better choice in hindsight as Microsoft went all out for their indie guys. Following a duo of successes, including a 3D adventure game known as the Ma, as well as the previously mentioned Splosion Man, 2010 saw the release of quite possibly their most ambitious title, Comic Jumper: The Adventures of Captain Smiley. Yeah, we're going back to the days of Xbox Live, so about 8 or so years ago. Imagine me, way fatter, a little bit shorter, with a stupid haircut and glasses. This is one of those games I've always wanted to talk about, ever since I started doing this channel, in fact. I've never heard anyone mention it, and if they do, it's nothing much. I don't know why. It's not like the game was some type of sleeper release or anything. It was all over the Xbox Live Arcade store. It was a huge deal. And I vividly remember it being spammed on like every page of the 360 dashboard. So needless to say, one day I'd had enough and bought it. I think it cost like 1,200 Microsoft points. It doesn't matter how old you are. If you remember those, welcome to oldness. Interestingly enough, before you even start the game, you see this really weird intro thing where someone makes a sandwich and then steps on it, which, okay, that's cool. You know, we really weren't ready for all the wacky memes we have today, so this is, it's pretty harmless. Comic Jumper is all about the plight of Captain Smiley, a down-on-his-luck superhero suffering from a string of bad comic issues. The thing is, nobody likes the guy, his sidekick, assistant, villains, even his readers. So much so that everyone kinda tosses him to the wayside, until Twisted Pixel themselves decide to step in and revitalize his image. This requires Smiley, as well as his sidekick Star, to perform various odd jobs, jumping into other comic series, and guest starring to raise enough money in an effort to relaunch the brand. Various hijinks ensue, what with the two characters in a fish-out-of-water scenario, traveling to various fantasy-based, Silver Age, and even shoujo manga worlds. It's pretty much a 2.5D beat-em-up platformer. You've got a basic jump, punch, and knockback attack, but Smiley also comes equipped with twin pistols for more action-intensive moments. It's here the game acts a lot like a twin-stick shooter, with the left controlling movement and the right aiming. Think Earthworm Jim meets Smash TV, taking a mechanic that's usually exclusive to overhead games and applying it to a two-dimensional plane. There's no real goal in levels. Sure, you need to make it from point A to B, but there are no collectible MacGuffins to be found. It's a very basic experience with most of the focus centered around combat. Though I guess at times it is more than just that, as certain sections come with something called a readership bonus, a challenge of sorts calling for you to complete a strenuous task in order to get some extra cash. It's little more than clearing a segment unscathed, but it calls for you to really slow down, sometimes moving at nothing more than a snail's pace in order to avoid tanking any hits. The game does keep things relatively fresh, however. One moment you could be running in a straight line, blasting whatever stands in your way, and the next could see you in an auto-scroller, on-rail shooter, or even QuickTime event. Smiley's base acts as the main hub area. It's here you get a chance to look around, talking to various characters and finding Easter eggs, usually based around Twisted Pixel's other works. You can also hit up the shop with all of the money you get. There's the usual upgrade stuff, health, damage dealt, and even a power-up which calls upon Twisted Pixel themselves to step in and clear the screen of any hazards. That's just a taste of this game's comedic chops. It's very self-aware in what it is and what it's doing. Think Deadpool with an emoji head and a very lax PG-13 rating. Smiley and Star are constantly at odds with one another. The captain's all business, whereas Star is more along for the ride. They're the quintessential odd couple, the straight man and comedic foil, if you will. Smiley will say something nerdy, and Star will proceed to lambaste him like there's no tomorrow. Hell, there's even moments where you question why these two are even friends, despite being connected somehow. Like, whenever Smiley's arch-nemesis Brad shows up, Star becomes absolutely enamored and begins rooting for him. I'm telling you, even if the gameplay doesn't quite suit your needs, this game should at least be played for the numerous occasions where any and all subtlety is tossed out the window. Certain pop culture icons are parodied, and even the comics in which you visit are viewed under the eye of scrutiny. Like, The Improbable Paper Pals is the best example of this. A Silver Age comic within the limits of a harsh censorship board, complete with a viciously feminist villain and an even more horrifically racist depiction of an Asian superhero. It's all very on the nose, and of course Star contributes to the madness, constantly swearing, which results in you being fined. Good God, I love this game.
Dear Improbable Paper Pals, although I am a fan of your comic, I must take umbrage, oh nice word, with your issue number 62, in which Origami Kid tells his arch nemesis Captain Kirigami that Captain Kirigami's radioactive scissors will not affect Paper Lad because Paper Lad's powers were caused by green radiation, which is more powerful than yellow radiation, when clearly in issue number 27, oh my God, okay, you know what, Eugene? You're a nerd.
We done yet?
Yeah, we're done.
Wait for me.
There's this really cool aesthetic difference between the genres you hop in. Nanok the Obliviator comes complete with calmer colors and watercolor backgrounds, Improbable Paper Pals is cel-shaded, and Cutie Cutie Cupid Kids, the unmistakable manga, is all black and white. With this also comes a change in how Smiley and Star appear, each time tweaked to fit in with the overall surroundings. The costumes and even the weapons change, leading to this really organic feeling where everything just sort of melts together in a flawless execution. Hell, even the manga comic sees you progressing from right to left as opposed to the traditional left to right. Quite a keen sense of detail on the developer's part. They could have had it exactly the same as everything else and there'd have been no problem. But instead, they went the extra mile. And look at that, the school even has its own mascot of sorts, isn't that? Wait a minute. Hint high. Tentacles. God fucking damn it. This is a pretty damn hard game though. What is it with indies and their unfailing knack for challenge? It's nothing too bad. It's less 8-bit Nintendo difficulty and more 16-bit. The game doesn't hold you to limited lives or anything like that. It's just kind of stingy with its checkpoints and the enemies deal a fair bit of damage. Needless to say, you'll die a bit, but within reason. Of course, there are ways around this. It's easy to exploit how forgiving the game really is, what with you being able to just run through some of the more intensive sections and even die on purpose just to get your health back up to 100%. That being said, there's no health power-ups to be found anywhere, and that is pretty poopy. It leads to things feeling artificial. You know, the game throws all of these obnoxious hazards your way, but offers nothing to soften the blow. Yeah, you can purchase an upgrade which expands your overall health, but even still, levels retain that feeling of cheapness in a lot of cases. This is a very hit-or-miss game when it comes to the gameplay. On one hand, it's a clear homage to classic SNES and Genesis titles, but on the other, it lacks in certain qualities to the point of where it doesn't feel as well-rounded as it could be. Like, whereas those classic games have a quality to them that makes them feel timeless, Comic Jumper sadly isn't as fortunate. But that isn't the mark of death. In fact, there's a lot about this game to be loved, regardless of its shortcomings. For starters, the graphics are awesome, and I know graphics aren't everything, but all things considered, being an indie game produced for the Xbox Live Arcade, a platform not known for much in terms of aesthetical appearance, this looks great even in 2019. And it helps that the various comic genres lend to the visuals as you change from one art style to another. This game also has a top-of-the-line voice cast. Smiley and Star are both voiced by Christopher Sabat. If that name sounds familiar, it's probably because you've watched a lot of anime with characters voiced by him. Vegeta, All Might, hell, he's even done work with Rooster Teeth. In fact, the majority of this game's voice cast is made up of people who have done work with Funimation, meaning that in choosing them, Twisted Pixel are a bunch of nerds. So yeah, Comic Jumper: The Adventures of Captain Smiley, an old XBLA hit I can say I finally talked about. I really enjoyed doing this actually. You know, there's a whole bunch of untapped potential within the bounds of those old Live Arcade and WiiWare titles, which I'm sure would make for some high quality discussion. We'll get there, eventually. But as always, for the time being, it's back to some old ass PS1 games. Hey, big ups to everyone who watched the video, as well as my gracious Patreon supporters. You guys all mean so much to me, and I thank you so very much for watching the video. If you'd like to support the channel, hit up the Calcom Patreon, but if not, you're already doing your part. Thanks for watching, I'm out of here.